I think we are. Thank you. I appreciate it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. Really happy that we can have this conversation on a regular basis with just such a brilliant leader on leadership. And what's kind of cool about it is that Rutherford Pascal also brings others with him to the table, and we have a fun roundtable, and we have a fun one planned here today because it's a great topic, and we've got some amazing people in the room. The topic today is so critical: building resistance. Sorry. Building language capability, building resilience, and preventing burnout. And that is so important because, wow, life is going by us at such rapid pace. And what was the name of the article yesterday that I posted up on the Global Chamber? So we had a global board meeting. We have a global board at Global Chamber called the Global Council, and it's co-led by Dr. Sanjeev Kagram and Francis Tesmer, two extraordinary, globally iconic leaders. And so we go through the meeting, and it was like, wow, look at all these ideas. We need to do this with Global Chamber, and this is what we're going to do. And the last minute was Colin Christie, who's our executive director in Manila, who's also the developer of Globi. And he said, okay, I just have one thing for 1 minute. Go to this article. Now that I'm thinking about it, I have to go see the article while I'm talking. Go to this article because it's really important. Let's see what it's called. It apparently has millions of views on X, and it's basically about AI. And that the fundamental story is everything is changing. So take a moment and read this and absorb it. It's called Something Big is Happening. And if I could summarize it, because I just took a few minutes, 30 minutes just to digest it and think about it. And fundamentally, what it is a tech business guy saying, it's happening so fast that if you have like a free version of AI, you don't even get a sense anywhere near of what's about to happen. Those of us that are in technology are seeing things that is the future, and everything is changing. And the article, something big is happening. My son-in-law, Jimmy, he just raised $20 million for his startup. This was his second round of money that raised, and he's building something spectacular, a global electric vehicle marketplace. Just so impressive. And it's actually now, he just bought a building very close to us here. Hope to have a Global Chamber logo on the building at some point. I sent it to him because he's the smartest guy that I know, and in terms of technology and staying up on it. His response was, yes, fundamentally this is true. There's quibbles with exactly what he's saying, but by the way, I'm converting my entire team over to Claude tomorrow. So if you haven't done something similar, I recommend, first of all, that you at least read that article. I'm sure you all are up on AI and what's happening. But I think what occurred to me from Colin's moment of Zen and warning is that we all need to take the time to completely change our perspective on everything. And so Rutherford, sorry to get a little bit distracted, but to me, it also goes to the concept of resilience and creativity and maybe prioritization and focus in on what's really important. This is something I struggle with. I end up just doing a lot of stuff, and I don't fully grasp the things that are the most important and go after them. I think that's an important aspect of resilience to be able to move forward. It just, you get burned out just by doing stuff, and that's not healthy. That's not good. And I feel it myself sometimes. And so even taking 30 minutes and just reading that article was very invigorating for me. And
Mhm.
as you might be able to tell, I mean, I was like really excited. And then when I sent it to Jimmy, he immediately sent me back 10 messages. Yes, yes, this is great. And tomorrow I'm putting everybody on Claude. And so I started to research that and hope to do something very similar with global. So this all goes back, Rutherford, to resilience, and that was the topic that you had suggested that we talk about. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being such an amazing resource on leadership. So what's your response to that, and how does something like that, something so dynamic, something in fact, in the article, it says you thought COVID was monumental. This is much bigger. And with COVID, as we remember, right, it was evolving and there was this something going on somewhere in the world. And then over weeks and months, it kind of started to hit us. And then it was finally absorbed. The same analogy he used in his article is that it's already happening in technology. Those of you who are in business don't see it yet, but it's here and you need to be aware of it. How does this, which is one of the biggest changes in human history, impact leadership?
It's actually it fits in perfectly because there's so much information. There's so many different tools, right, in this whole thing that it's hard to stay current, right? And so that you get this, there's a thing called the paradox of choice, right? So if you have one or two choices, fairly easy, you make one or two choices, right? And if you have 75 choices, it becomes daunting. It's hard to understand what to choose, where to go, what to go next, which Doug is really what you were talking about. There's so much information out there that it's hard to choose, it's hard to understand what to do. Let me give you a perfect example. So you live in Southern California, Doug. I lived in Northern California. There's this really high-end market called Draeger's in San Mateo.
Sure, been there.
So yeah, you know Draeger's has like 15 to 20 SKUs of like Tabasco sauce, of
It,
like
it's
peppers.
it boggles the mind. The vegetables, the way they're laid out, it's magical.
There's so much, right?
I agree.
So
Exactly.
one time they did this thing they take like they people would walk in the store and they had a table set up at the front with the one day they did seven choices of Tabasco sauce, different flavors, right? That nobody's ever heard of, and no names, like, and you've never heard of. And then they saw how their sales were that day with these seven choices. The next day they did three choices, and they saw how their sales was. So which day do you think had greater sales? The day with three, because you can just your mind it makes decisions easier when there's a few choices.
Makes
When
sense.
there's so many choices, when there's so many things, it becomes overload. And so sometimes what happens with certain people is they go, I just can't get there. I'll never be good at this. I'll I'm not gonna participate, which is what some people are doing, right? So it's a perfect thing because it's not it doesn't you don't build resilience, right, by giving 30 choices. You build resilience by building one choice, growing, building another choice, doing something else in that same category, growing, right? And continue to do that. That's how you build resilience, right? You don't build it like all at once, which is what becomes overload and for the certain types of personality ruins them.
Amazing. That's so important. The this conversation, by the way, Rutherford is the key speaker, but I encourage all of you to participate either by raising your hand or interrupting, whatever's most appropriate. We've got some superstars here in the room. Regarding thoughts about this, and Michael Quigley in particular is somebody who knows leadership. He teaches leadership. He Does that resonate, Michael, with you? That idea that you've got to be focused and narrow choices.
Short answer is yes. Um, yeah, I mean, I love hearing Rutherford speak because when he says something, you go, "Yeah, I think that. I agree with that." It's like he shows you back to what you're already thinking and adds that little bit extra. So, thank you for that. I've
Mhm.
literally just been writing about this to go out for an article tomorrow. So, if I can add my little two pence, I learned a phrase recently which is pre-resilience. So, if you think about resilience, it's that ability to bounce back. So you're having a bad day, you get back on track, or an organization has a bad quarter and it gets right back on it. But pre meaning before is a way of thinking, how do we stop the thing bad, say it's overwhelm or the bad investment, from happening in the first place? So, for example, if you don't want to drink too much alcohol on a night out, when you go on the night out, you say that choice is off the table, like Rutherford said. And as long as you don't make that choice, you're fine. And I'm always coming up with ways to try and help with that. And I came up with a percentage I call it the magic 2%. Because I figured out if you've got 52 weeks in a year and you take 2 weeks off for vacation, that's 50 weeks times two is 100. So by that logic, every week is 2% of the year. And so we're 6 weeks into the year, roughly, and you've got people who've broken New Year's resolutions or they've been working hard for 6 weeks, they've not got a lot of money, they're tired. And if you say to them, yeah, but it's only 12% of the year done, you still got 88% all to play for. That can reframe the narrative because we want the 100%, don't we? We don't just want 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 13 weeks, one good year. That's leadership, diligent consistency. You can't pick people up and drop them after 6 months. You can't jump on a latest trend and then, we can't do that. So yeah, so that's my suggestion is the magic 2%. So saying that to people when they're having a difficult time, you know, you say, no matter what happens this week, it's only 2%. If it's good, great. But if it's not, we can reset and we can go again. And when I've spoken to people, they've kind of gone, huh, and they kind of relax and they feel a little bit calmer. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful to add to the conversation, but yeah, that's some thoughts for you.
Yeah. And Marie?
Yeah, I love what both of you are saying. I love that 2%, Michael, because I think so often we underestimate what we can do in a day and we overestimate the year and then we burn out. And that's coming from someone who has experienced burnout. Because Rutherford, I loved what you were saying as well. It was that go, 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 work, work, work. So I was very leadership driven in my business, but at the expense of my personal life and personal care. So that was the imbalance for me. So the business was very healthy, but Anne Marie not so much. So I love what you said as well. Yeah, great perspectives.
Frank, you're one of the more mindful people that I know. It's hard for me to imagine that you reach a point of burnout, but I think we all do, right? What what do you think about that pre uh, resilience versus prelience? Is that what you said, Michael? It's
We
based
resist.
Resilience.
Pre, so like pre, but instead of re. So pre before, re is after.
pre-relient, prelience. Like
Amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, I know I would never burn out. It depends on, nothing can happen because I have my techniques actually to balance that. But coming back to that very interesting view of having an information overflow, what we have at the moment, on the other side saying focus, which is very interesting because it also has a downside. There's a split because a lot of leaders are very narrow-minded. They are too focused. They only see one thing. So I think the challenge is here to focus on the one hand, not to be overwhelmed by information overflow, but to keep different perspectives within the focus. Yeah. And I think if you can change perspectives, that also helps you for resilience because it gives you a second way, an alternative of something where you might be stuck. Yeah. So you can change, you can pivot your focus. And that could be very helpful because it provides you creativity if you look from different perspectives. And creativity is something where I think helps really to prevent resilience or go within resilience. Yeah.
Resilience.
I learned that. Thanks.
I'm going to practice that word. So there's the one aspect, Rutherford, of ourselves and how we protect ourselves and recharge ourselves and avoid the burnout. What about the team aspect and making sure that the team overall is healthy and doesn't experience the kind of things that we're talking about for ourselves?
So, one of the most important thing as a leader is understanding what everyone's doing and the workload or capacity. I think of workload as capacity. Everyone's got a certain level of capacity. Some have more than others, right? And so there's you as a leader I can't give Michael more work than he's doing. If he's got two projects going right now and it's occupying 90% of the time, I can't give him another project that is just as big as the last two because that will create burnout. That will create overload and the capacity is not there, right? And it's incumbent upon me as a leader to understand that, to check in with Michael and say, hey, listen, how are you doing with those projects? Do you think is this third project, can you do it in a time? And it's incumbent upon Michael, if, by the way, if we built the right culture, like if we built the right, if you're the right leader, for Michael to come back and say, Rutherford, I can't do it. I need help. I need somebody else to do this because I'm working 80 hours this week. I'm working, I can't do it. That's the really important thing as a leader is to understand what everybody on their team's capacity is, their workload, and give them enough where you push them, right? Because you want them to grow, but you don't push them too much so it's an overload situation. And you only know that by asking, checking in, talking on a regular basis.
Okay. What kind of questions are used in that circumstance?
Oh,
What are you
so
deep do
yeah,
you go?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug. Well, I cut you off, Doug. Yeah, I'll let you finish.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. What kind of questions are appropriate without going too far? What kind, is it just the basic general questions about how things are going, or how deep do you go?
So no, it's honestly, it's asking them where they are. What's their sense of when will this project or task be done? Is there anything getting you away from getting it done? Do you need more help? It's it's really simple questions like that. And you also you can ask them, but some people are very cautious because they don't want to disappoint the leader, right? So you as a leader have to understand, huh, they didn't get back to me as fast as they normally do. Or I can see them, they're not engaged as much in meetings because I can see their minds someplace else. So people's behavior changes in sometimes small ways, sometimes bigger ways. And you as a leader have to recognize that so you can say, Anne-Marie, I don't understand. Let me know. Help me understand what's going on with you. Is your plate overloaded right now? And and hopefully Anne-Marie says, Thanks for asking. The answer is yes. I haven't been able to sleep. I'm always thinking about it. I'm worried about this. I'm bringing work home. I'm working on the weekend. So yeah, Doug, it's questioning as a leader, but it's also recognizing the people who work for you, who you work for. Is their behavior changed in any form, matter, or shape? Are they showing up differently?
Got it. There's a cultural aspect, and I know Michael Quigley, you do a lot of that work, don't you? You teach organizations, leaders within an organization to have the right culture. How does that resonate with you?
I love coming here because I just make loads of notes. I keep learning things. Fantastic. I would like to just add a little bit to what you said in relation to your question on culture. My father told me that culture is how we do things here. That's a nice, simple definition. And I've expanded on that to learn that it includes how we think, how we act, and how we interact. So if you take that as a definition, okay, it's quite simple. I like to use like stories and things to help people to understand because the moment you start saying, you need to do this, I think this, it can get a bit personal. And like Rutherford's saying, with things like emotional capacity and workload, people can take things personally. So you don't want to get into that kind of thing. If you haven't watched the film Gattaca from the 1990s, I suggest you watch it. And without spoiling it too much, there's two brothers go for a swim and they swim out, they're like 10. So they swim out, see who can swim the furthest. And every time the younger brother loses, and he has to be, has to swim back because he's saving himself for the swim back. And then one time he beats his older brother. And his older brother's there like swimming in the water, like, how have you beaten me? I am stronger. You've never beaten me. And he goes, oh, it's simple. I didn't save anything for the way back. I get shivers thinking about it because I've been like that as a teacher before I run a business. Some people care so much, like Anne-Marie was saying, they don't understand their emotional capacity, their work capacity. They're not able to kind of know when they've gone too far. So like Rutherford's saying, you as a leader have to create the context for them to say, that thing you're doing, you think it's 40 hours work, it's actually more like 60 because you have to understand this. And you can model that behavior. I read the article which you posted last week, the Global Chamber, the McKinsey article on leadership, and it was saying what can leaders do that AI can't do. And it's this stuff about culture. So something that might help with that. We all want results, which are the end, but talk to people around the actual price and the effort that needs to be made to get those results. Because some people overperform, some people underperform, some people are lazy. And like Brother was saying, if you don't check in, you don't know what's going on in their life. And so on paper, they might only have 30 hours, two projects. You're thinking they've got capacity. But part of that culture that we all want is that cares is to understand, yeah, but grandma's got cancer. So that has an emotional impact that we don't see on the page. So to kind of sum up what I've said, the cultural aspect, understanding how we do things here, and then by that, if it starts to go away from the way you'd normally do things there, you can identify, diagnose. There's a problem there. I'd love to know what Anne-Marie thinks about that because obviously she's got a background in health. So she's a medical professional. She's a lot better than I am for diagnosing problems. But yeah, I would recommend talking and being open about the price and the effort because we don't talk about that enough. We have this almost martyrdom culture. We get the results at any point. However, like we say with COVID and things, disrupting things, we need to talk about the price, the effort, the amount of space it takes up to create a data center, all these things that lead to the results. Yeah. We've got to be willing to have this conversation. So thank you.
What are your thoughts, Rutherford?
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree with that. And it's there's a cost, right? There's a price, there's a cost to these types of things, and it's important that leaders understand that cost that your employees are, are paying to get this project done, to get these things done. And you know, leadership's hard. Leadership is not for the faint of heart, right? You have to recognize on a regular basis, and you make these calls because of what you've noticed, if you care. And I always say this, if you care about the people, if you care about the business, if you care about everything going on. Uh, and one thing I'll say, and I'll let Anne Marie go after this comment, is one thing I'll say is what sometimes, Michael's talking about results, and sometimes leaders think in order to get the best results, I got to work this person till they can't work any longer. And as we all know, that's not correct. We have the highest and best use of our employees, and then we need them to relax, to recharge, and so that's really, really important to get the best results. We have to slow down to speed up, right? And with that, I'll ask Anne Marie to any comments, then Frank.
Yeah, I suppose, guys, for me, what underpins all of this is how well do I know me? And I use my own lack of leadership in self in my first business. And I'm always a product of my product. I think if you're going to coach and mentor people, you need to be able to bring them from where you've been and made mistakes. But so I think for everything you're saying, Rutherford, is so true about you have to recognize it, you have to be empathetic, you have to be understanding. But to do that, you have to know yourself. So if, for me, looking back on it, I was a controlling perfectionist, workaholic. So when I had to engineer all of that backwards, that came from a fear of mistakes being made. Clinically in a health business, you can't have mistakes. So I was leading people from a place of my own fear, and that wasn't going to serve the business. So, but I had to gain an understanding of, right, where is my level of consciousness here? Where's the work I need to do? Where's the understanding I need for me so that I can lead self to lead others?
Mhm.
I
Frank?
think
Yeah, on the spot, fully agree. I think a leader is only as good as the team is. So a leader needs to care for the team. They need to recognize, they need to work constantly, they need to motivate or give motives and coach them. So a leader needs to be in constant contact and immediately sense if something is going wrong, if something is maybe demotivated, if something is really overworked. If somebody just has nothing to do and is more reading paper and whatever, because you have all of these types, right? So, but there's something underlying, which I think is also important to see whether you have the right people at the right place. So if they're really motivated. If they are not motivated, they have much faster burnout, even with less work, because motivation is not what they are doing. On the other hand, you always have workload which you don't like, because you can't have only work where you're 100% behind and motivated or whatever. So it's important for the leader, I think, to see who is doing what and coach them a bit with some workloads or specific topics or projects to see that they understand it in the right way, that they are motivated, or if they are not really motivated because it's, I don't know, it's routine work and they don't like it, to understand that this is part to contribute to the team. Yeah, but if there's a positive attitude to that one, I think we can prevent really overwork or resilience or promote resilience here.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Thanks, Frank. That's spectacular because Doug, think about like building resilience is building a muscle in the gym, right? You add resistance every week to them to build a muscle, but you also rest. Your muscle doesn't grow the day in the gym, it grows the days after, right? If you think about when you give somebody a little bit more work, they grow, they build, they get stronger, they get more resilience. Because you don't build resilience by dumping stuff on them. Right? You build resilience by slowly giving them things, stretching them, right? Building them, building that foundation so they can take on more work. And it's it's now um it's now part of the deal. It's not an issue for them because they've done it before. So have you guys have there's a terminology that that people rise to the level of their incompetence, right? You ever hear that? Well, the reason that some people rise to the level of their incompetence is because the position before didn't get these small little snacks, small little steps to build that resilience, to build that knowledge, to build that capacity. So when they got to the next role, they could be successful. They jumped into this next role and they weren't ready and they would probably fail as a leader. So as far as building resilience, Doug, it's really about adding these small things. And last thing is you're building teams, you're growing people. Frank talked about somebody reading a newspaper, right? If they're not doing things that are motivating them, that they're doing the right things, they're not helping the organization. They're not helping anybody. So you as a leader have to figure out what skill, what task, what project can I give them to motivate them that's in their wheelhouse, in their zone of genius, that will help the project, help the organization, and help them grow.
Zone of genius.
Zone of genius. Everyone has a zone of genius where it's their gifts, talents, beliefs, where they're spectacular. It's think about the zone of genius as when you're doing something, there's people who are great analytically, and they're working on an Excel spreadsheet, and they're working on it for hours, and they get lost in it. They're so like engaged in it, they get lost. And other people like me, I'm working on an Excel spreadsheet. I can't wait to get off this spreadsheet. 5 minutes is really good with me at Excel spreadsheet. Then I need to move on to something else. But that's their zone of genius. That's where they thrive. That's where time disappears. Oh my God, I haven't eaten lunch. Things like that. Right?
Flow.
Any comments? Anne Marie, Frank,
It's a flow
Michael?
mechanism,
What's
right? If you're in a flow, you don't, yeah, you can go on and go on and go on. But it's not very often to catch that actually.
Like surfing the waves,
Yeah.
waiting for the right wave. Zone of genius.
Uh-huh.
What do you think, Anne? What's
Yeah, I love it.
your
Absolutely.
zone of genius, Anne Marie?
My zone of genius is the people. So I'm a bit like Rutherford, the spreadsheet, the finances, all of the, scheduling. That's not but the coaching people, training people, even the sales part of the business. That's what I love, getting out, meeting people, talking about solutions, helping them get an understanding of where they're at or why they're maybe where they are. That's the bit I love.
Hmm. I love the analogy, Rutherford, with exercise, that the muscle builds later and not to be overwhelmed. And I guess your point on people that get raised to their level of incompetence, it's too big of a jump, right? And they don't have the bandwidth to make those incremental changes. And by the time they were progressing, it just becomes overwhelming. Probably relates back to earlier, right? You said too many things, too difficult, and it ends up in failure. When it is incremental like that, what are some of the things, maybe from a celebratory or recognizing, their steps? What are some of the things along the way, other than just them recognizing that they're progressing, your team is progressing? How do you use recognition and celebration as in supporting that whole process as a leader?
I'll start and then you guys can chime in. So recognition is extremely important. And I think Frank and guys and Mike will talk about culture, and it's not only that you recognize, it's how you recognize that person. We all know people that do not want to be called out in public. They want to be recognized behind the scenes. They want to understand that they're adding value to the organization. They want to know that they're doing a good job. They want all that, but they do not want that recognition. So it's incumbent on a leader knowing not only that they they recognize and celebrate, but how they do it, when they do it is important because an email sometimes is spectacular, sometimes it's not. Before something live at a live meeting, if for the right person, lights them up, they're on cloud nine for 2, 3 months. It just depends. So it's really, really important. So you have to celebrate, right? Because the one of the worst things that happened in my career was when I, as a first line leader, uh, did everything that was asked of my team, did great. And then the person who was my leader didn't acknowledge it at all. And I was baffled by it because when things went down, I got a lot of noise. Like, the quarter before when we didn't do as well, I heard a lot of things, right? But when the team is the number one in the country and you hear nothing, you never forget that. And and he didn't celebrate it. Not me, the team. And that's the part that people remember. So you notice I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten that because nobody forgets when they get treated terribly. Nobody does. So and and it's not only me, the team, and everybody else. I think about that in leadership is I have to recognize these people for what have they accomplished because guess what? I want them to do it again. How do I get them to do this over and over again? Is by recognizing them in the appropriate manner. Michael?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The final thing you just said there about repetition is absolutely fantastic. A couple of things. You're quite right. Feedback, especially when it's positive, should be as timely as possible, right? So like as soon to the behavior or the result as possible. It's no good waiting until the next performance review in 6 weeks and say, oh, that thing you did that you can't remember. So being timely, definitely being personal and knowing who likes the big fuss in front of everybody, who's a lot more quiet, because I have made that mistake and you watch their face just fall. A really important distinction I learned in teaching that I brought into business, into leadership, is praising the effort in a very specific way. Because I learned that from Carol Dweck, who's done amazing work on growth mindset. If you praise anybody in a generic way, you may as well have just said the word banana at them because it just doesn't land. And the danger with praising them only when they get the result is there's a subcontext to everything you say. Because when you say something, there are many other things you could have said. So we used to talk about it like you have a curriculum you teach, but there's a shadow curriculum that you really teach. All right. So, for example, if I say to you, well done, Rutherford, you did that spectacularly quickly. I'm also saying if you take a bit longer, you're a failure. Now, again, that comes back to the culture, comes back to the context, comes back to the situation. But generally, if you praise the effort, that person hears, well, even though it didn't quite work out, they recognize me and I'm the more encouraged to do it again. And that goes full circle to the point that Rutherford made about results. And one of the best things I like to do with praise for people is I create a phrase called a success reference point. And people are like, what the heck does that mean? And I basically say, if you've done one thing successful ever, you have a reference point for success. Whether that's learning how to speak English, drive a car, ride a skateboard, I think like Doug's grandson can. It doesn't matter what it is. Your brain goes, I can do that. And then you guide them, go, yeah, so that next thing, like Rutherford was saying with the muscle, it's not the same, but it's a bit similar. And I want to hear, and you encourage that person. And the final thing I want to add, which I only learnt last week, which is about YouTube, which is really interesting, is this person who's a marketing expert said people will not subscribe to your channel because of the quality of your content. I was like, well, he goes, they'll subscribe to your content if they know that there's something new coming, exciting. It's not finished. And you can put that into your praise because you can say, and that thing you've done has also built you up for the next project, for the next, and you guide them so they don't think it's like an isolated thing or they got a bit lucky. Like, oh no, 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 this soft skill stuff we're doing is preparing you for the future. Where can you be in 5 years? You carry on at this rate, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're absolutely right. It's a leadership opportunity. It's not something you have to do. If you do it really well, like Rutherford's saying, you do it once or twice well, the impact can last for decades. So I think it's a really, really important aspect of leadership. I'll pass the baton to Anne-Marie, I think is next, or Frank.
Okay, Mike. Yeah, that feedback loop is just such an important piece, and I love what you said, Michael. It's about praising the effort, not just the result. Um, and I think I think it's so important on a number of levels. First of all, it builds confidence, it builds trust. But on the flip side, for a business where you need people to perform, you need people to be accountable. At the end of the day, it's a business. When you have that feedback mechanism where you're praising the effort and the results, and there's that collaborative piece, it means you can also then strengthen accountability structures. You can hold people accountable. You can make, people responsible. And I think then if mistakes happen, it leaves it much easier to say, well, Amory, this didn't work out. Let us try and understand what happened here. What do you think? So it just builds that two-way. I call it kind of the feedback loop is what I call it, but it's a two-way kind of collaborative communicative process. But I think praising the effort as well as the result is so important, because you have, like Rutherford talked about earlier, that people might work behind the scenes and might never be front to center, but their effort contributes to the result. So I think it's, yes, it's that's a great conversation all around. I think, Frank, are you next?
Yeah, love what you all say. It's really brilliant and really wonderful to bring that all together in one nice document, because there's so many brilliant ideas, thoughts, and suggestions on that one. From my observation, what I see or what I've realized is that people very often run on auto mode, and they're always thinking and they can't stop thinking. And this never end, this thinking carousel they have in their head that stresses them, and that brings really very often also stress to them, being overworked or whatever. They have to take some days off. So it's also very important to work on this level. And I actually have learned a 2 minutes exercise where you can stop your thoughts, you reset, and you start without any preoccupations or whatever you have in your mind. Very important if you go, for instance, in meetings, because people jump from a project into meetings and they are full of thoughts of what they just have done. And now they have to prepare for something. They don't have the time to reflect in between. They react automatically. It doesn't help the meeting. It doesn't help the team. It doesn't help the person. Yeah. So having kind of these tools, let's say, to reset and to stop that, I think is very valuable. So it's important to have feedbacks, loops, and whatever. But I think it's also important to give them some tools, let's say, very effective tools to calm down, to reset, to stop that, and to reflect in between.
Mhm.
Great insights.
Can I piggyback, Doug, a little bit on that?
Please do.
Is that reset? So what's really important for people resetting, recharging, is understanding how you recharge. Emery said this is the beginning of understanding who you are, right? So everybody recharges differently. Some people need music. Some people need to take a walk. Some people need to watch mindless television. Some people need to read a book. There's different ways. And I was talking to this group earlier this week, and they said, "Hey, we are physicians. We are stuck in this thing. We have to see patients every 7 minutes. I don't. How can I recharge? And I don't. I'm not in control of my life. I am burning out. What can I do?" Right? So you talked about these tools, Frank, right? So I said to him, I said, "Listen, this you have more control than you think. So so sometimes some things you could do is take 3 deep breaths, right? Center yourself and then go back. I mean, just in the moment, you can do that very quickly. That's one of many tools that Frank is, I think, alluding to, that you can do to recharge, because it doesn't have to be some elaborate thing. Would I love to meditate for 10 minutes? Yes. I, I would. Can I in the workplace? Maybe, maybe not, right? So there's things you can do. I will tell you, I've done each of them. I've walked around the building. I've taken breaks. And they, for me personally, they work. For Pauline Crawford, who just jumped on, I see, it might not work, right? You know,
Yes.
and so we have to figure out what works for us and what how we can recharge in our own mind and in our own situation. I just wanted to piggyback on that comment.
Yeah, we're all different. I totally agree.
I love what you said, my apologies for coming in late, but I had some expected sad news from England. My brother-in-law just passed away, but it was expected. But this is the issue with, life. He's been ill for the last several weeks, and he's actually been in hospice care. So it's not unexpected, but even so, when you get the news, it impacts you at a very solar plexus level. And it's obviously my concern is for my sister. I love my brother-in-law, but my heart is breaking for her. And I think in work today, as we go forward, we have to remember the human condition. That for me is what leadership is about. Understanding that you just hold the space for somebody. So holding the space for somebody means you don't have to say anything, but you have to just be there in that space, even if it's prayer or if it's holding the space. But the one thing not to do is to say, "Oh, I know what you're going through," because actually you don't know what somebody's going through. But you can be in the space of saying, "I'm a human being and I'm here for you." I think for me that's what leadership is should be going forward. The human respect for humans. That's just me.
And we thank you for saying that, Pauline. And I'm so sorry to hear that news. I feel bad for you. What I'll say is this is a I mean this has happened to almost every leader.
Yeah.
Something like this news. And how do you act? How do you react when something like that happens to somebody on your team? How do you how do you build a culture uh, that people will understand they can tell you that, and you will act in the, I'm going to say, human
Yeah.
manner, right? And that those situations, if handled correctly, will not only build resilience in the team, will build a culture, will understand, it will cement you as this spectacular leader.
Mm.
It's how you react to situations that are that's so real life, like Pauline just talked about. Because I mean, I will tell you, we've all led for a while. This happens to people. Things like this happen, and it's really how you respond
Yeah.
to those people that really cement you as a leader in everybody's eyes, not just Pauline's, but they understand how did you handle the situation because it's real life. Thanks,
Yeah.
Pauline, for letting us know.
Thank you.
We've only got a few minutes, and going back to Frank's point about recharging and making sure that everyone here has enough time to charge up before the top of the hour meeting that undoubtedly has. Rutherford, could you maybe do any wrap up that you'd like to make, given, I think, some really amazing uh, comments today, some great insights. What have you absorbed from what you've learned today, and what would you like to leave us with?
Well, I learned a new word, presilience. So I'm gonna I have that I'm gonna figure out how do I use that resilience before, which is by the way, it makes complete sense. So that is something that I learned, and like Michael said, as leaders, we're learning every single time we talk to people, especially the talent and the experience on this call. With everybody here is tremendous. I think about things as that, what we do as leaders is we have to recognize when people are drowning, right? And then we have to understand, that we have to send them this lifeline. And that's, hey, listen, take a day off. Hey, I'm going to take this this project off your plate. Hey, I'm going to give you help and understand. In order to build resilience and to prevent, you know, this burnout that we have to, as leaders, be much better, be much more mindful of what everybody's going through. And Doug, you said this. You said, is it just as simple as asking questions? And the answer is typically, if the leader continues to check in, by the way, authentically, not just walking by and saying, "How you doing?" and then not don't really want a response. And if they have a response, they don't stop to peel the onion and say, "Well, interesting, tell me more." Or it's just, it can't be. If the leaders do that on a regular basis, you're going to build resilience. You're not going to get people that are burned out, and you're going to create this culture that is long lasting. That's what I would say. And I think we have like, Doug, you want to finish now? Or you want to? Can I get a word from these three or four people?
Can you each do like 30 seconds? And then
Yep.
we can wrap up. Who'd like to go first? Hi, Dr. Pauline. How are you? Good to see you.
30 seconds.
Um, I'm I just appreciate the space that you've all held for me with my news. So I think that's what leaders need to do. It's uh, not to suffocate people, allow the space. It's very important to have a space around and not try and justify what your part in their sorrow is, or the stress, or the inability to recharge. Just listen and love.
Awesome.
Being there. I love that.
Fantastic. Anne Marie?
The magic 2%, that's my one from today. I love it. And the Brazilians. So that's been brilliant. And love being part of this conversation, just sharing insights. But for me as well, leadership also very, very much, it has to be underpinned by how well do I know me? How do I know my reactions? How do I know my responses? And what drives my behavior? So I think that's a critical part of it for me as well. So thank you. That was
You
really,
got
really
it. Frank?
enjoyable.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks very much. I love the zone of genius, and I put a lot of notes during the conversation, so it was really amazing. But one point to add, it's not only the leader himself who is responsible to prevent burnout in his team, it's also the team looking after themselves, creating a culture, an atmosphere where everybody listens to each other and has also the openness to come to the leader if they feel that something is wrong. Yeah. But
Awesome.
thank you very much. Amazing. Really brilliant. Love it. Let's continue this.
Absolutely. Michael, bring us home.
Leadership is creating the environment for other people to be successful. And you can do that through traditions, through your relationships, and like Dr. Pauline said, paying attention to the rhythms of life. You don't have to do it on your own.
I finally figured out how to say Brazilians by putting the American Z into it. And then when I spell it with an S, I thought, well, that's probably the normal way you would spell it because that's the way resilience is. And certainly, Michael being British, he's going to use an S, right? It's that ZS thing. So is that how you say it or spell it with an S? Brazilians?
Yeah, but you can spell it with a Z, that's fine.
It helps me mentally to say it. Otherwise, I'm struggling with it. So thank you very much for the freedom to do that. But I look forward. Did you say you're actually doing something tomorrow on that in your on your video?
I'm
Me?
sending out an email,
Yeah.
which you'll get
Yeah.
tomorrow morning about it.
Brilliant. And is that only for members of the group, like I am a member, or is it more broad?
Uh, the video I'll send just for members, but for the email I'll send to you, you can pass it on to anybody you want. Feel free.
Very good. Thank you all. This has been very inspiring. The so many different concepts and ideas, and so thank you, Rutherford, for getting us on this road for this topic and getting such a great group of people together. We are starting in a few minutes on our global sales conversation, and so the chat in the chat area, there's a link there if you'd like to recharge, go get a cup of coffee, come back and talk about sales and how that can be better done with Dan Hinman, also from the UK. Please join us. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Thanks
Doug.
so much, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.